Okay, well, call the meeting on the Committee of Fiscal Affairs to order. Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year.
Okay, first item of business is the approval of the minutes for our meeting on November 24th, 2008.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Any comments, changes? All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? So moved. We have two resolutions. I'll read the first one, move it to a vote, and the second one. They're very simple and straightforward. It's a resolution authorizing the General Counsel to execute a contract on behalf of the Office of University Controller to enter into a contract with a vendor who will offer bookbinding services. Such contract shall not exceed an estimated cost of $995,000. The contract term shall be for 5 years with an option for the university to terminate on each anniversary date of the contract. The university will use this contract to provide bookbinding services for all of the City University campus libraries. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded? Seconded. Any questions, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And action item C, a resolution authorizing the General Counsel to execute a memorandum of understanding on behalf of the university and the State University System Administration, NY Link, to continue receiving critical library services for 20 City University College libraries and the City University Central Office. The total amount of services shall not exceed $1,850,000 for a 1-year term. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? So now we get to the good part of the meeting. A report from Vice Chancellor Ernesto Malave on the state of the budgets.
Thank you, and good afternoon, and Happy New Year, everyone. I'd like to tell you what you have before you. You have a 3 or 4 page analysis, preliminary analysis of the state executive budget and the New York City financial plan. And I'd like to begin with the relatively simple budget scenario, which is the City of New York first, and the community colleges, and then we could move to the state executive budget and the senior colleges and have a conversation about the budget condition there. First on the city side, as you know, the mayor earlier this year had recommended a series of budget reductions across the board to city agencies, and for CUNY, that represented a $5.1 million reduction in support. We were able to mitigate the effects of that by implementing $2.6 million in cuts to the community colleges, and we held the remainder centrally and from our reserves, and we were able to start the fiscal year with what we believe to be that level of budget pressure. The mayor also at the same time had recommended $9.5 million in reductions for fiscal year beginning July 1 or fiscal 2010. And that's where we stood the last time we met. As an update to that, I'm pleased to report that the City Council and the Mayor negotiated a budget agreement a number of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago approximately, that provided a full restoration of the $5.1 million in planned reductions for the community colleges. So for the community colleges for the current year, what we thought at the time was going to be a permanent cut has now been fully restored. That's obviously very good news for the community colleges. We'll be in a position to make budget restorations in the next couple of weeks, and they can engage in the kind of investment programs that they were anticipating prior to the planned reductions. So that's a really good piece of news, and I think we all welcome that. On the other hand, the mayor also warning about the condition in the out years made a recommendation and a challenge to the city agencies, including CUNY, to make reductions of up to another 7% city funds. That initial $9.5 million that I just referred to was the first cut of 5% in city support. Now the mayor is asking for the universities to consider another 7%. That translates to $12.7 million in planned reductions in fiscal 2010. So right now we're staring at potential reductions in city support of over $20 million between the two proposals. Now the mayor has not yet responded has not yet issued his recommendations for that 7%. He is considering the various proposals the city agencies have submitted. We have submitted a proposal that would make some continued cuts on the administrative side, but the actions of this board at the December 8th meeting to authorize the chancellor to raise tuition by up to $400 for the community colleges. If these cuts get enacted, the university will be able to offset those reductions with the revenue from the planned tuition increases, depending on what the level is. So notwithstanding what the mayor has put on the table, our response has been that we have a revenue solution that is part of the solution in order to maintain the budget stability at the community colleges beginning July 1st. So that's where we are with the city of New York. And the city of New York's preliminary budget won't be issued until later this month, and that will only be the preliminary budget and the update to the financial plan. The mayor's actual executive budget will not be issued until either late April or early May, depending on the actions taken in Albany by the state legislature. Okay. We can come back to questions when I finish the state and the senior college operating budget. And there it's also an interesting story, and I think a very favorable story for the City University of New York. The governor's executive budget for the senior colleges totals nearly $1.9 billion, and that represents an increase in overall funding of almost $51 million. Now, that $51 million in increased funding comes from a combination of reductions in state support of approximately $65 million, offset by an increase in tuition revenue of $115. You'll note that the governor had already telegraphed months ago that he was going to be recommending a tuition proposal in the area of $600 for undergraduate resident students. He has followed up with that. And so the budget message from the governor includes revenues associated with that 15% increase. And that also is consistent with the actions taken by this board on December 8th, authorizing the chancellor to go up to $600 in tuition revenue, depending on what the overall circumstances are. We won't know that for a while. There's a couple of other challenges in this budget, however, that are worth noting. One, the governor is also, before I go into the budget challenge, let me speak to the tuition policy that the governor has enunciated. And for the first time in state budget history, this will be the first time that a governor, or anybody else for that matter, proposes a tuition increase that also includes a portion of that tuition coming back for an investment program. So this overall budget includes 20% of the revenue from tuition going for an investment program. That's a $22 million investment program. So we start the executive budget. We start with the executive budget with an investment program of an investment pot of $22 million. And I've been here for a long time, and that has never, ever been the case. So I think that is a good place to begin, absent any additional budget erosion on the state side. The challenge that we have, and I don't really want to use the word challenge too much because I think it's a manageable one, remember, this is only the beginning of the process, not the end of the process. There's a negative $20 million lump sum reduction that the university is supposed to apply to so-called non-core areas in the budget. So the governor is still nevertheless looking for additional savings to deal with the budget situation in Albany. The reason we say that it's not too much of a challenge, one, because it is directed to the non-core areas, so we can still take the tuition revenue and apply it to the goals that the trustees adopted in the budget request for full-time faculty and the rest. And between now and the time that this budget is adopted, in whenever, April or May, we believe that there will be some relief against that $20 million. But under any scenario, we believe that we'll be able to carry out the investment program, notwithstanding that $20 million budget challenge. And that is for the community, for the senior colleges. For the community colleges, there are two things that are going on. The governor is recommending a $4.2 million reduction in the current year. You'll recall that when he sought the legislature's cooperation back on November 18th to make some mid-year reductions, he had included a 10% reduction in aid to community colleges. In the current year, while there are no cuts for the senior colleges for the current year, he did include a recommendation for a $4.2 million reduction for the community colleges. That's the only risk that we have in the current year from the state budget. More importantly, however, this 10% reduction in aid to community colleges and funding per FTE extends to 2010. That's where the numbers get a little higher. that would translate to a $16.8 million reduction in aid to the community colleges beginning July 1st, associated with this 10% reduction in funding for LTE. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, the governor is recognizing the enrollment gains at the community colleges, and to the extent that the funding for the community colleges is enrollment-based, all that revenue is recognized in the budget. So we have an offsetting increase of $13.2 million in aid to community colleges. So year to year, the budget challenges for the community colleges in terms of state support is only $3.6 million. And so I think it's important to bear that in mind. So you have two different numbers, but the year-to-year change is $13.6 million. And of course, we'll be working with the State University of New York and the legislature to deal with the budget challenge associated with that proposal. The other proposal, finally, is the governor is introducing a differential tuition policy for the senior colleges that will permit the charging of different tuition by program and by institution for non-resident students only. You'll recall that a lot of work that was done at the Commission on Higher Education to sort of deregulate the tuition environment for both CUNY and SUNY argued that we need to sort of open this area up. And I think the governor and his budget division is proposing that we sort of first pilot it on the non-resident side and enable colleges. And this is largely also, when it comes to institution-based differentials, something that's largely driven by the interests of SUNY. We as a university have taken the posture that program differentiation is something that we sort of welcome and would like to experiment with, but institutional differentiation is something we're not prepared to do. But nonetheless, between CUNY and SUNY, we would probably both embrace this proposal, and that is another proposal that's in the budget. An important feature is also that the governor has made it very clear that any revenue that's associated with that differential tuition go back dollar for dollar to the institution, and has set aside a $12 million appropriation to capture that revenue for CUNY and a $20 million appropriation to capture that revenue for SUNY. So they're making some headway in that direction in differential tuition policy, as they are in the innovation on the policy with respect to tuition coming back to the university for investment purposes. So that's where we are on the fiscal stuff. And I'll entertain any questions if anyone has any before I move on to some of the financial aid proposals that are included in the governor's recommendations.
Any questions on the operating budget side?
Part of the governor's proposal is to eliminate TAP eligibility for graduate students. How many students would be affected by that, do you think?
Well, the entire expenditure level for graduate TAP is $3 million statewide. And the maximum award is like $500. There must be perhaps, a few hundred students that would be impacted. It's not a big number statewide, but it is. They're looking for.
It's about 496 students.
That's pretty good.
It's $250,000.
Okay, well, while we're on that, any questions on
On the operating side, because we're going to do another analysis of.
Do you have any sense whether the legislature would support the differential tuition for non-resident students? Yes.
I think so.
They may. I think the legislators who were on the commission were hesitant on the resident side, but they were open to a discussion on the non-resident side as sort of, just sort of a pilot basis. And it was argued at the time that it should be over a 3-year period. There would be a phase, so people could see exactly what the impact would be. Okay.
Financial aid.
All right, on financial aid, Alan has volunteered, he's become expert in financial aid, so.
This is actually, clearly this is all designed to save money, but it's actually, some of it is fairly thoughtful. So let me just quickly go through all of it and save the most important one for last.
Shocking that some.
First, they want to change the eligibility standards to start your 3rd semester at CUNY. That leaving out remedial work, you need to have 18 credits at the end of your 2nd semester with a 1.8 index, which is more than we have now, but not a crazy standard to hold people to. But a little bit lower than that probably would affect less of our students. They want to end they want to make it impossible for people to collect HESIC financial aid if they're in default of loans. It looks like this only affects 33 of our students, so obviously not a very large issue for us. They want to, as we just spoke about, they want to end TAP eligibility for graduate students. Again, that's a very small number of students we have and not much money. They want to end, in the TAP calculations, the way it works now, if you're collecting a public pension, that doesn't count. So they want to end that exclusion, which I think actually is a matter of public policy, is probably right. So the way it's set up currently, if I retired tomorrow, I would make a pretty nice pension at this point. My wife would retire in a nice pension. So between us, we'd make several $100,000, and our kids could collect full TAP. It doesn't seem appropriate. So I think that's probably a good public policy recommendation. The one that I like the best is they want to talk about changing TAP eligibility. Right now, you only get 8 semesters of TAP.
Isn't that discriminating having children later in life?
Yes, indeed.
I'm not sure my kids should get a
It's a
free
double
ride.
penalty.
I also had the chance to mention a good judgment to marry a woman with a public pension also. One of the good things in here is they want to change the eligibility from what it is now, which is 8 semesters of TAP, to 120 credits instead. That would be a wonderful thing for us.
That's terrific.
Right now, if you think about the math, you get 8 semesters of 12 credits, which is what most of our students do. And then, at the end, when you still have another 30 credits to go, suddenly you're out of TAP. So we like that one. The most important one, though, is right now, a full TAP award is 12 credits. They want to change that to 15 credits, or prorate everything below that. So if you were taking 12 credits, it would be prorated against that. You get 12/15ths if you were taking 10. So that obviously is not good for our students and saves the state a lot of money. On the other hand, it may change the behavior of some of our students in a very good way and make it more likely to graduate. But conversely, what they're doing is they're saying now that between 10 and 14 credits, that's going to be an entitlement. That is a wonderful thing for our students. So that's the trade-off. Right now, we have a little bit of part-time TAP out there. But right now, basically, if you're taking 10, 11, 12, 13 credits, you're not getting a TAP award. Now you would get it. So you would get 2/3 of the reward if you only took 10 credits. That's a very good thing for our students. Now, in the state calculations, on balance, they save more money with the 12 to 15, if nobody changes their behavior. And we tried to figure out some estimate of how much behavior would be changed. But if no one changes their behavior, they would save a lot of money from that difference of 12 to 15, give some of it back on the 10 to 14 change. On balance, though, they would save money. But net, the state saves money, unless our students behave differently. That's hard to determine what that number will be. So it's not as mindless a proposal as we've seen in TAP reform in the past.
Questions? LaBelle?
And the political calculus here among the 3 sectors, meaning the private sector, CUNY, and SUNY, everybody's going to have a little different skin in the game on this with respect to the last, looking about the profile of the students. But I think on the last piece, we probably come out better, even though that first piece of going up to 15, which I think is a good thing to get students to take. And we're actually encouraging the presidents to get back to their campuses and to say, students ought to take more credits, because ultimately, that is a better strategy with respect to moving on and getting their degrees.
So they don't qualify for the student pension?
We'll see. But I think, the private sector is going to look at this in a very different way, I think, than CUNY would look, and SUNY will probably be someplace in between. So somehow we'll have to bring the sectors together and see what we can come up with.
And the private schools are really advantaged by the governor's other proposal for the loan program. That really helps them much more than us.
Under the proposal, are the number of TAP dollars per credit less for a part-time student than a full-time student? Is that the basis of savings?
The Higher Education Services Corporation has not released their numbers. We're crunching our own numbers.
Right.
And I think that Bob Tatchin and his staff are preparing a full impact statement on exactly what each of the elements of this set of proposals would have by sector, both senior and community colleges, the dollars that are saved and the number of students that are affected. And I think in about a week's time, we'll be able to circulate that so everyone can really be informed about the impact. And of course, the chancellor, when he testifies in Albany, will have all that information available, so you can all see it. But right now, the numbers are still being crunched.
Thank you.
Alan, I understand you're gonna do capital
I can
program?
mention, that, we do it in another committee, but I thought it's worth mentioning where we ended up on the capital budget. The very good news in this is, if you remember, we approached the state with something called a state of good repair, which will allow us to keep the university, in a much better state of repair than we are currently. And they gave us 1 year of the 5-year program. They're gonna give us the second year this year, which is another $284 million. In addition, they are gonna free up money for us for the remaining money we need for the Advanced Science Research Center, for CUNY First, and the final touches for the new school of social work. So on balance, their thinking, I believe, is that the legislature is gonna always add capital money. But we're starting out with almost $300 million in new capital money, which is as good as we've done in the average intervening year when we're not starting a new capital budget. So assuming the legislature behaves like the legislature normally does, I think we're gonna have a good year.
All right. Thank you. Any questions on the capital budget?
One of the things, Mr. Chairman, with the stimulus package, which obviously we are watching very, very closely, I think we've mentioned this before, that CUNY took the lead in mobilizing a national effort to get most of the public universities together to talk with their governors about including infrastructure for public universities as part of the stimulus program. And I'm pleased to say that Governor Paterson has included about $2.6 billion for higher education infrastructure as part of the, now I don't know if we're going to get this or how this ultimately is going to work, but not only CUNY, but most of the people with whom we brought together on this public summit have engaged with their governors. And if you look across the United States today, almost all of the governors that are putting together plans are including higher education infrastructure as part of the stimulus package. That happens, even if it affects just a couple of our projects, that will have a very important impact on our capital budget, even further enhancing the needs of our students and people who work here at the university.
We were able to submit approximately $1.1 billion in projects. And the requirements were to be shovel-ready and to be green projects. And then just, as an aside, we also had to submit what we thought the job impact of those projects would be in 2 parts. One, direct construction jobs, and the other, the fabrication of the materials.
Yeah.
So estimated approximately 6,000 jobs in construction and 3,000 in fabrication.
Okay.
Any other comments? The investment report?
Yes.
In front of you, there's a memorandum from Janet Crone, the investment officer, where, I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but I encourage everyone to read it in anticipation of our meeting on January 22nd. However, she was not being melodramatic by calling the 3 months ended 2008 as dramatic to the capital markets in the opening paragraph, in case you missed anything later.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Janet, if you can come up for a
She here, I
moment.
didn't see her.
Yeah,
Oh, there she
she
is.
is,
I don't
she
know.
is.
Sorry.
In case there are any questions, but, we're down, 17% in the quarter. That actually is a little bit better than most of the numbers that I've seen from other endowments and universities, which are in excess of 22%. So I think we're sort of holding our own. But I think, as the chairman indicated, we have a meeting scheduled of the investment subcommittee on the 22nd of this month, and we'll be making a lot of decisions at that meeting with respect to how we move forward, whether we enter into the emerging markets, and what we do about a number of advisors. Because if you can look at the report, We're down 17.2. It would not have been so bad had it not been for, Zevenberger and the sort of erosion that took place there that didn't take place anywhere else. So we may take a particular look at that particular advisor. Everyone else was adding value except that advisor. It was very much in the negative territory, so that's worth sort of looking at. Janet, do you want to add anything to that, or any other observations that we sort of just missed here?
Just that it's obviously, challenging times, but we also see opportunities for long-term investors in this period, if we remain patient and prudent in the way we go about things. So I'm looking forward to the meeting on the 22nd.
Right, and we'll come back to this committee with the set of recommendations from the investment subcommittee, but I look forward to that and sort of settling in for the long haul and monitoring it very carefully as we sort of move forward on the investments. But the numbers were a little bit better than I thought they would be when I asked for the report, so that was some good news.
As a footnote to the investment committee report, the subcommittee, or this report, mid-December, I had conversations with both Vice Chancellor Malave and Dobrin regarding any exposure that we had in this fund or any of the various college funds to the Madoff situation, and it was determined after looking at all of the funds that there was no exposure whatsoever.
No, the foundations are clean and we're clean. We were not affected. Now, individual donors, we have obviously heard from our foundations that, and from our colleges that were anticipating either, investments or gifts, that, they suddenly got those calls saying, I'm not going to be able to follow up with that commitment. And so clearly there's an impact, but none of the funds that the foundations were managing were exposed directly to any of the Madoff funds. So that,
Given Mrs. Madoff is a graduate of Queens College, was involved with the Queens College Foundation,
Yes,
Member of the board.
yes.
fortunately.
It's way too small, that's why.
Did you say we're way too small?
Yes.
See, you worked for it.
See some benefits to
Are there any other reports? Are there any other questions? Are there any other comments? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
there is a, just want to point out, as you leave, we'll be handing out the financial disclosure edition, so you can have
Great.
additional readings on the budget and some other matters that are important, financial matters that are important.
You're going to be mailing them as well?
I'm going to be emailing it
Okay.
to all of you, but you can have a hard copy before you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
excellent. And it's so moved to adjourn.
Thank you. See you a couple of weeks with the subcommittee.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry. It's,
Got one,